Every day I heard news about child molestation, rapes, domestic violence, acid attacks, dowry deaths.
I set out to find out if India is beyond repair.
I was so frustrated that I wanted to go on a long walk.
Something happened, and then Srishti sent me 1,000 hours of footage.
And meet the women of my billion.
Hi all, this is Silas from AsianCultureVulture.com. I'm pleased you could join me. We're going to be talking about a new documentary called Women of My Billion, Womb. It's about to hit the London Indian Film Festival as a world premiere, and it's about the journey undertaken by Srishti Bakshi, who walked from Kanyakumari in the south of India to Srinagar, Kashmir in the north, to bring attention to the plight of women and the equality issues. We'll be talking to Srishti herself and her director, Aditesh Sharma. Let's go and meet them. Srishti, you're the actual kind of main protagonist because it really covers it. Tell us a little bit about the film and your journey, as it were.
So in 2017, I decided that I'm going to walk across India, from south of India to north of India. I'm going to dial back a bit in terms of how this all came about. I've been an armchair activist for a very long time, where I used to take to the keyboard, vent my anger on social media and around, especially with cases which were highlighted around violence against women. But then came a time I was in Hong Kong, sitting on a bus, just returning home, and I came across a news article about a gang rape. It was Highway 91, where a mother and a daughter were gang raped in front of the father. This particular case just moved me to a degree where I felt that I have to be on the ground and I have to do something more. So that's when I packed my bags, I left my job, and I returned to India to walk. So a lot of people ask me, why did I walk? I walked because, sometimes when you're really angry, people say, go for a walk and calm yourself down.
Yeah.
I think this was a really long walk for me to just kind of understand why this violence exists and how to find solutions which can work on the ground and change this reality.
So Aditesh, how did you come to be involved in the filming then?
I met her when she was crossing Delhi Crime, and I was shooting for a different project, Delhi Crime. I was shooting for Delhi Crime.
Yes.
So I was with Apurva. Apurva was one of the producers on Delhi Crime, and that's how I was introduced to Srishti. She visited our hotel, and we started talking, and I was blown away. I was like, this is incredible. This is extraordinary. And when she left for Kashmir after that, but the journey stayed with me, and every day whenever I would come back from set, I would just think about the movement.
Right.
And I would end up talking to Apurva about it. And one day I just mentioned that there should be a film, because there was a camera team that was working with Srishti. They were documenting interviews. They were shooting the workshops for awareness purposes.
Right.
But I spoke to Apurva and I said, I see a film here. I see a documentary, and it's important because it will amplify the movement. It will support the movement.
Yes.
And so she said, let's start looking for directors. And I said, yeah, for sure, I would help.
Yeah.
And that's how Monisha and Apurva. Monisha is our executive producer, and we started looking for directors. And then something happened, and then Srishti sent me 1,000 hours of footage in some 6-7 hard drives. And it took me some 3 months to just go through, watch everything from a journey.
Right.
And after that, after 3 months, I started writing a script, and that is how I came on board, after I narrated the script.
Srishti, with the organization, the logistics and all that, was your father a big help in that? How did you go about it when you had the idea of the walk? And how did you build the activism and the kind of education, the classes that you did, all that? How did that all come about?
Well, this was a logistical nightmare of a journey. And I think there was no other person who could have done this other than my father. He was with me through the day I decided to walk till the last day when I crossed my 3,800 mark. He was the operations head on it. He had retired from the army by that time, thank God. The producer on this is Apurva Bakshi, and she is my sister.
Yeah, I was going to thank you. Yes.
Again, she championed me through and throughout. And initially, it was we had a lot of collaborators, brands who had come on board because of my background in the corporate sector.
The idea for the documentary, how did that really came through your conversation, Aditesh, with Apurva, and a kind of understanding that we can make something bigger from this?
So when I started watching the footage, there was no particular design to it because there was no director on the journey. It was more of a coverage. So when I started watching it, so after 3 months of watching the footage, I realized that there's no design. So I started writing the script.
Right.
And while writing the script, I thought of imagining the film. I thought of imagining myself working with Srishti and how would I have designed the film.
So we would cover around 30 to 35 kilometers every day.
You do your 30, some of that was running, some of that was, how did that work? I mean, did you have an idea of 20 kilometers, or, what was the kind of, as things got into it, did you run 30 kilometers? How did you approach that?
If you talk about this journey and you talk about the fact that you're walking, a 4-year-old to a 90-year-old, everybody would be very, very willing to say, okay, I'm going to come and walk with you.
Yes.
If you would have said that I'm going to run, I don't think that those many people would have come and walked with me. Yeah. So we walked most of the part when people were present. Right. There were lots of, many days where we didn't have people walking with us. And those are the days I think I tried to cover more of the distance. And that's when I used to run.
Right. And what any part of that journey that stays with you, that you really remember now, 2 years on?
So one thing that I really, kind of remember and puts a smile on my face is I was walking through Tamil Nadu, and there was a lady who was selling custard apple on the highway. As soon as I crossed over her stall, I saw her, like from the corner of my eye, I saw her like she's packing a few custard apples in a polythene, and she came running towards me. And in Tamil, she said that whatever you are doing, this might not help me today, but I know that this is going to help my daughter. Wow. She's going to come back from school and she's going to hear about you. Yeah. And she gave me the custard apples. Right. It was a moment that it was really hot that day. I was just questioning myself whether what am I doing this for? There's nobody here. Right. But the fact that she came running like that and she spoke to me, it was very encouraging and kind of very touching. Yeah. It was mentally very challenging as well. Yeah. To be able to walk every day and then talk to women and consume their the information that they give you about the violence that they have probably faced or facing. So, you could be walking with a woman who would end up going home and being beaten up in the evening. It was, I didn't have time to decompress a lot of these, emotions that I was going through. But the fact remains that for every story that was gory, that was sad, upsetting, there were several others which were very, very encouraging. And the courage that these women showed, I think that was something that kept me afloat and kept me walking.
When we shortlisted Sangeeta, Neha and Pragya, I was sure that I need to reshoot them again, because I technically also and everything else. So we called them in Delhi at Srishti's house, at Srishti's parents' house. And we had done a 10-day shoot. So those 10, I can never forget those 10 days, because the impact that had on me was so powerful. And I am so privileged to be I know Sangeeta, Neha and Pragya personally now. So I feel really special that I know them personally.
I set out to find out if India is beyond repair. I set out to find out if my country, if everything is like there's no hope. But the fact remains that there is hope. Right. For every violent episode that I can recount hearing, there are 20 other stories which are very hopeful, and people are trying to make change in their very, very small ways. So our learning from the entire journey is that the violence is at the hands of a minority, but it is the silence of the majority which perpetuates violence. Right. So we are now in the business of breaking that silence. Yeah. And documentary is our first step forward to communicate and to break the large, this deafening silence from the majority. We want this film to travel. We want this film to be showcased and on a platform where this can percolate into dinner table discussions.
These stories are not unknown. we all know that this happens, but sometimes we don't see enough change or any change. And how would you respond to that?
So when I was walking, I walked with the same sentiment. I felt that I'm walking towards this, it's there in the film as well. It's this huge mountain. It's just very difficult to conquer it. And there are so many ways to, solution. Some people say, oh, you must, education is the best way to tackle this problem. But the fact remains that I have seen violence exist in educated households. In wealthy households, women in mansions are still poor because they don't have access to financial help or finances. So do you think that education is going to change everything? It's not going to change everything. It's the mindset. The mindset has to change. There is a lot of, and changing a mindset of society is the hardest thing to do. Well, I met a girl, she is an SI, superintendent in a police in Madhya Pradesh. Her name is Neelam.
Right.
And she is from a household where her father was a constable, is a constable, but she gained ranks and she became an officer. So every afternoon, she basically would leave her office and take her tiffin and eat her tiffin with schoolgirls in her uniform every single day. Wow. So if she's famous for that in her local area. So I asked her, Neelam, why do you do that? Yeah. And she said, ma'am, when you see these little girls and they see you in a uniform, they actually can see a reality for themselves. Right. And that's why I go and have lunch every day with them. These are girls from the same village and country where we think that only girls are not going to school and they don't have access. Yeah. But Neelam is that champion who's making that little change by just having lunch.
Is it also about letting those kind of girls have dreams, for them to dream bigger, to think beyond what
absolutely
might be?
Earlier we had inspirational figures, like these girls have a lot of access to Bollywood, for example. Yeah. But the thing is that it's a very distant dream. It's a very distant thing that, an actress, is she inspiring enough for me to think that I can change my life? Yeah. But Neelam is. So these local heroes are making a huge, huge difference in their own little ways.
So I must ask you, finally, in this kind of formal bit, what can we do outside India? What do you think? What is our role as a diaspora, as people who have family and we go to India and we still have a big cultural attachment to the country? What do you think we can do? Do we have a role to play?
Absolutely. In terms of, a lot of people think that, only mobilization of funds are expected out of the audience that you're talking about. I think there's more to it. Right. I think there's more of today, I am in Edinburgh, I live here. Right. But the fact is that I actually conduct a lot of workshops online with schoolgirls in Bihar. Right. So the thing is that I take out time from my life, and I have a little baby now, so it's a busy life that I've been leading for the last 7-8 months. Okay. But the thing is that yes, of course, there are organizations on the ground who we can support. Pragya from our documentary, she is an acid attack survivor herself. She runs Atijeevan Foundation. She's been commended by the president, who works for acid attack and burn survivors. Every year she does this huge drive to be able to talk to people and get them on board on doctors, for example, or nursing staff who can guide the medical treatment that is required. So just lending your own support in your way, somebody who's maybe a social media strategist in the US could help Pragya, develop her social media strategy. I think that creates a kind of resource pool that we could provide for an organization like hers to go further than just, kind of cutting a check, I would say.